I can pinpoint the exact moment my marriage began to crumble. It was a Tuesday evening, and I was setting the table for dinner while my husband Donovan poured himself a second scotch. Our 7-year-old daughter Paige was at a playdate, giving us a rare, quiet moment in our suburban Chicago home. "I've been thinking," I said, smoothing the tablecloth. "Now that Paige is in school full-time, I'd like to go back to work. Maybe start with part-time legal consulting." Donovan looked up from his phone, his expression a mixture of amusement and condescension that had become increasingly familiar over our 10-year marriage. "Why would you want to do that, Audra? It's not like we need the money." He gestured vaguely around our spacious dining room with its designer furniture and artfully arranged flowers, all chosen and maintained by me. "Besides, your law degree is what, 12 years old now? Practically obsolete." I placed the silverware with deliberate care, controlling my response. "My JD is from Northwestern, Donovan. That doesn't become obsolete. And it's not about the money, I miss the intellectual challenge." He laughed, not unkindly, but dismissively. "Come on, you've got the charity board, your book club, the garden committee. Isn't that challenging enough? And who would manage everything here?" Again, the sweeping gesture encompassing our home, our lives, our carefully curated existence. "I managed a full caseload at Winters and Shaw while pregnant," I reminded him. "I think I can handle part-time work in household management." Donovan sighed, setting down his phone to give me his full attention, a rarity these days. At 42 he was still handsome, his dark hair just beginning to silver at the temples. His body kept fit by the personal trainer he saw 3 times a week. As a senior partner at one of Chicago's most prestigious investment firms, he radiated the confidence of a man accustomed to being right. "Look, we agreed you'd stay home when Paige was born. It's been good for her, good for our family. Why change things now?" "We agreed it would be temporary," I corrected, "until she started school. And now she needs someone available for school events, playdates, summer breaks. Kids don't raise themselves, Audra. I'm not talking about abandoning her. Just reclaiming a piece of my professional identity." His expression softened into something worse than dismissal pity. "Honey, be realistic. The legal world has moved on. After all this time away, you'd be starting from scratch, competing with hungry 20-somethings willing to work 80-hour weeks." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. Glanced down, immediately engaged by whatever appeared on the screen. "I need to take this. Client emergency." He was already walking toward his home office. "We'll finish this conversation later." But we didn't. That was the pattern. Important discussions about my needs somehow never concluded, eternally deferred to a later that never materialized. Over the following weeks, I sent out feelers to former colleagues, updated my resume, and researched how other attorneys had successfully returned to practice after career gaps. Each step revitalized something in me that had been dormant since I'd placed my career on indefinite hold for our family. Donovan didn't notice my efforts, or if he did, he didn't comment. He was increasingly absent late nights at the office, weekend client emergencies, business trips that seemed to multiply. Our conversations became transactional, focused on Paige's schedule, household matters, and social obligations. Looking back, I should have recognized the signs. The growing emotional distance, the mysterious text messages he'd shield from my view, the new cologne, the sudden interest in his appearance beyond his usual well-groomed standard. But I was so focused on my own reawakening ambitions that I missed the obvious until it was impossible to ignore. The revelation came in the most clitched way imaginable: a misplaced cell phone left on the kitchen counter while he showered, lighting up with text messages from Vanessa L. The preview snippets visible on the screen required no further investigation. "Last night was amazing, and can't wait until your trip to Boston," told me everything I needed to know. When confronted, Donovan didn't deny it. In fact, he seemed almost relieved, as though my discovery had saved him the trouble of figuring out how to tell me himself. "It just happened," he said, using perhaps the oldest excuse in the history of infidelity. "Vanessa understands the pressures of my work. We connect on a different level." "She's your associate," I said flatly. "She's 29. 30, he corrected, as if that made a difference. "And yes, she works at the firm, but not directly under me. There's no ethical issue. No ethical issue." As if the only potential ethical concern was a workplace reporting relationship, not the vows we'd made a decade ago. Not the family we'd built, not the trust he'd shattered. That evening marked the true beginning of the end, not just of my marriage, but of the version of myself I'd allowed to be diminished over the years. I didn't know it yet, But Donovan's betrayal would ultimately catalyze a transformation neither of us could have anticipated. One that would culminate 18 months later in a courtroom moment I replayed in my mind on difficult days when I needed to remind myself of how far I'd come. The 6 months following Donovan's confession blurred into a parade of failed couples therapy, fruitless mediation, and inevitable attorney retentions. Throughout it all, I maintained composure for Paige's sake, answering her questions honestly while shielding her from the uglier realities of our separation. "Is it because Daddy loves Miss Vanessa now?" she asked one evening as I tucked her in, her innocent question piercing my carefully constructed calm. "Adult relationships are complicated," I said, smoothing her dark curls. "But none of this is your fault, and both Daddy and I love you very much. That will never change." That night, after Paige was asleep, I calculated our finances in a way I hadn't since given up my career. The numbers weren't reassuring. Donovan's initial settlement offer made his position clear: minimum child support, 3 years of modest alimony, and an undervalued buyout for my portion of the house equity. The message was unmistakable. Without his income, my standard of living would inevitably decline. "He's testing your resolve," my attorney, Marcia Diaz, explained. "Hoping you'll be intimidated by the prospect of supporting yourself. I have my law degree," I reminded her, "as much for my own benefit as hers. I can work." Marcia looked at me thoughtfully. "When was the last time you practiced?" 8 years ago. But before Paige, I was on track for partnership at Winters & Shaw, specializing in corporate compliance and regulatory law. She nodded, making notes. "That's promising. Those areas have evolved, but the fundamental principles remain consistent. And firms increasingly recognize the value of work-life balance, especially for experienced attorneys with specialized knowledge." Her encouragement sparked something in me, a rekindling of professional confidence I'd allowed to be extinguished. That evening, I reached out to Jordan Winters, my former mentor, requesting a coffee meeting. Jordan, now in his early 60s, had changed little, still razor-sharp, with the same penetrating gaze that could dissect a faulty legal argument in seconds. After brief pleasantries, he listened intently as I outlined my situation. "Donovan always struck me as a bit too pleased with himself," he remarked, "but his loss might be the legal profession's gain. You were one of our most promising associates, Audra." "That was a lifetime ago," I said. "I've been out of practice for 8 years. The law changes, but good legal minds don't." He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "I'm semi-retired now, but I've been considering a new venture boutique firm specializing in compliance for financial technology companies. It's a growing niche that larger firms aren't serving effectively." My pulse quickened. That's where my interest was heading before I left practice. "I remember. Your paper on regulatory frameworks for emerging payment systems was ahead of its time. The issues you identified have become central to the field. That paper, published shortly before my departure from practice, had been my proudest professional achievement." Jordan not only remembered it, but considered it prescient. "I'm not offering you a job, Audra," he continued. "I'm suggesting a partnership. You'd need to get up to speed-intensive study, certifications, the works. But your foundational knowledge is solid, and you bring a perspective many current practitioners lack." "A partnership?" I echoed, stunned. "Which means you're viewing the field with fresh eyes. I've been following your volunteer work with the Community Legal Aid Clinic. Your analytical skills are as sharp as ever." As I drove home, possibilities raced through my mind. Jordan's proposal offered not just employment but true partnership professional, a quality that Donovan had subtly undermined throughout our marriage. The path would be challenging, requiring intensive retraining. But for the first time in years, I felt a sense of purpose extending beyond my roles as mother and wife. That night, I created a detailed action plan. Refresher courses, certification requirements, childcare arrangements, financial contingencies. This wasn't just about financial independence or proving something to Donovan. This was about reclaiming the professional identity I'd set aside, not because it was obsolete as Donovan had suggested, but because it had been temporarily paused. Over the next 12 months, I immersed myself in rebuilding my legal career while navigating increasingly contentious divorce proceedings. Each day followed a strict schedule: Paige to school, intensive study until pickup, evenings divided between her homework and my continuing education, and late nights formulating business plans with Jordan. The divorce dragged on, with Donovan finding new reasons to delay agreements or adjust previously settled terms. His initial disbelief that I was seriously pursuing a legal career had evolved into subtle obstruction. "Another late meeting?" He would say when I requested schedule adjustments for certification prep courses. I don't think that's in Paige's best interest. Stability is important during divorce, the irony of him invoking stability after appending our family. For his affair wasn't lost on me, but I maintained a pragmatic approach, focusing on the long game rather than momentary vindication. Jordan proved to be exactly the mentor and partner I needed. His experience complemented my fresh perspective, and his industry connections provided crucial introductions. We secured our first client, a promising financial technology startup 6 months into our planning phase. "They're taking a chance on us," Jordan acknowledged. "But their CEO was impressed by your regulatory framework analysis. She said it addressed compliance issues they hadn't even considered yet." That first client led to referrals, and by month 8, we had enough potential business to officially launch Winters Chun Compliance Law, specializing in regulatory frameworks for emerging financial technologies. We leased a modest office, hired a paralegal, and began establishing our professional presence. Throughout this period, I kept our developing firm intentionally low profile, not out of secrecy, but strategic necessity. Jordan agreed with this approach, particularly given the timing with my ongoing divorce. "Donovan still thinks you're taking refresher courses to eventually seek employment," he noted during planning. "That misconception might work in our favor during settlement negotiations." At each mediation session, Donovan's attorney emphasized his client's generosity in supporting his soon-to-be ex-wife's attempts to re-enter the workforce at an entry-level position. The implied narrative that I would struggle without Donovan's continued financial assistance underpinned their consistently inadequate settlement offers. My attorney Marcia advised patience. "Let him underestimate you. The final hearing is scheduled for next month. By then you'll have a clearer picture of the firm's prospects." What neither of us anticipated was how dramatically that picture would clarify before our court date. A respected legal journal highlighted Winters Chun as a new boutique firm bringing fresh perspective to regulatory challenges. This was followed by a referral from a major financial institution seeking guidance on blockchain payment systems. 3 days before our final divorce hearing, Jordan and I signed the contract for our largest client yet, a technology company with a revolutionary payment platform. The retainer alone exceeded what would have been a year's alimony under Donovan's proposed settlement. That evening, as I reviewed our firm's projections, Paige peeked into my home office. "Dad says you're going to be a working mom now," she said. "He said things will be different." I chose my words carefully. "I am working again, yes. But I'll always make time for what's important, like reading with you. Some things will be different, but different doesn't have to mean worse." She nodded solemnly. "I told Dad I think it's cool that you're a lawyer again." He made a weird face. As I tucked her in later, I couldn't help reflecting on her innocent observation. Tomorrow wasn't about defeating Donovan, but it was about establishing the foundation for my new independence, for Paige's security, and for the professional value he had consistently undermined. The family court had institutional beige walls, uncomfortable wooden benches, and the distinct atmosphere of lives being dismantled and rearranged through legal procedure. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a tailored navy suit that represented both my legal professionalism and personal transformation. Inside, Donovan and his attorney were already seated. My soon-to-be ex's husband looked polished as always, his expression conveying the confident expectation of someone accustomed to getting his way. Judge Teresa Alvarez entered, and proceedings began with standard formalities. She noted our extended negotiation period and numerous unresolved issues. "I understand the parties have been unable to reach agreement on financial arrangements," she stated. "Let's address those items first." Donovan's attorney stood with practiced gravitas. "Your Honor, my client has been more than generous. He's willing to provide 3 years of alimony at $3,000 monthly, despite Mrs. Reynolds' refusal to compromise." After hearing from Marcia, the judge turned to Donovan. "Mr. Reynolds, I understand you believe the proposed settlement is generous. Would you care to elaborate?" Donovan straightened his tie, his preparation gesture for important presentations. "Your Honor, throughout our marriage, I've been the primary breadwinner. My income as a senior investment partner provided our lifestyle. While my wife is beginning to pursue employment again, her earning potential after 8 years out of the workforce is naturally limited." Then came the moment that would replay in my mind for years afterward. "My ex-wife is taking some courses to refresh her legal knowledge," he continued, his tone condescending. "It's commendable, but let's be realistic about her prospects. Her little job, if she secures one, will likely be entry-level at best. The courtroom stilled, as his dismissive characterization hung in the air. Mrs. Reynolds, Judge Alvarez said, "Would you like to respond to your husband's assessment?" I stood calm and centered. "Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to correct several mischaracterizations. First, I haven't been taking courses to secure entry-level employment. I've been completing advanced certifications in financial technology regulatory compliance while establishing a specialized legal practice." Donovan shifted in his seat, a frown forming. "Second, I am not seeking employment. I am a founding partner in Winters-Chun Compliance Law, specializing in regulatory frameworks for emerging financial technologies." The silence deepened. Donovan's attorney leaned over to whisper something to him. "Our firm launched 8 months ago and has already secured multiple clients, including MarketEdge Technologies, whose contract was finalized this week." I handed a document to Marcia, who presented it to the court. "This is our current client list and fee structure. My projected income for the coming year exceeds Mr. Reynolds' current salary." Judge Alvarez reviewed the document with raised eyebrows. "This is quite impressive, Mrs. Reynolds. Or should I say Miss Chun? Chun is my professional name. Your Honor, it was my name before marriage." Donovan's face transformed from confidence to stunned disbelief. "In light of this information," the judge continued, "Mr. Reynolds' characterization seems significantly misinformed. Does your client wish to reconsider his position?" The next hour unfolded in revised negotiations. By the hearing's conclusion, we had reached an equitable agreement, not because Donovan had suddenly become generous, but because his leverage had evaporated when confronted with my professional resurrection. As we gathered our documents, Donovan approached me. "Why didn't you tell me about the firm, the clients, any of it?" I considered him for a moment. "You never asked, Donovan. You were too busy assuming you knew my limitations." Outside, Paige waited with my sister, her face brightening when she spotted me. "Did you win, Mom?" she asked as I knelt to hug her. I smiled. "Let's just say we're all going to be okay. More than okay." And as we walked into the sunlight, I knew that was the truest victory of all.